Hello, everyone. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. Today's topic is about June, men's mental health awareness. As normal, it's Dennis Takama and myself, Greg Forzani, as our hosts. And our guests today are Joe Forzani. Joe is a former Grey Cup champion in the CFL, was a founding member of Forzani Group, which started with one store, grew to 450 stores. Chad Hewlett is the owner and founder of Energy Equine, and you have a second location called Synergy Equine?
Yes.
So 2 vet clinics in Airdrie and Calgary, probably one of the most successful vet clinics in Calgary and Airdrie, like the 2 locations. And Adam Jones is our third guest. And Adam is the owner of Max Green Windows. And what else, Adam?
Endorphin Dream Garage, Luxottic Auto Boutique, and a few other things.
Cool. And Adam's done very, very well over the last 15 years I've known him.
I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg. And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast, where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later.
So today we want to get into June is, men's mental health awareness month, right? And we want to kind of come at it from a perspective of men put a lot of undue pressure and stress on themselves in many areas of life. But today we kind of want to focus and bring awareness to, as business owners, men bring a lot of undue pressure on themselves because they feel like they got to be the provider. Sandra and I were talking about this last night, and to me, it kind of a light bulb went on. I'm like, hey, I think men put a lot of undue pressure on themselves because they feel like the buck stops at them. Like, if it doesn't work, who's going to bail me out, right? And I think we find a lot of the times we don't think anybody can bail us out. So the buck stops at us, then there's extra pressure on the shoulders. And Adam, actually, I want to ask you, because I know this subject, one of the reasons we asked you, 2 reasons. One, I know this subject is very important to you and you're very passionate about it. So we want to definitely hear your perspective. And 2, you're a successful business owner. And I guess kind of the point we want to get to today is how making your business successful can help pull you out of that stressful mentality and could be a great solution along with other solutions. But helping make your business successful can help be a solution for that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been through it all, from all the ups and downs of running a business. I started Max Green Windows and Doors out of my kitchen, basically, and I was doing everything from installing during the day to sales calls right after that to going home and doing administration and scheduling. Luckily, I didn't have a family at that time, so it wasn't the same level of pressure. But as we got older, started having kids, and now I have 3 wonderful kids, but it definitely adds a lot more stress because now you're providing for not just a significant other, but 3 kids and the families of all the employees that work for you. So you also want to try to balance things from a personal level and work level. You want to be able to have some friendships. You want to be able to have that family time and that family life. But when you're constantly consumed by the stress and anxiety of stuff that needs to be done that you ran out of time to do, it is quite stressful.
Yeah, for sure. Dennis, you have 3 kids. You probably feel the same way.
No, not at all. It's no problem. It's just super easy. No pressure knowing that you have to feed and take care of 4 other people on a regular basis, and knowing that every decision you make can influence whether or not they survive.
No kidding. Chad, the other day, actually, you brought up an interesting point. We had a conversation. You had said another thing maybe people don't think about is, when you go through a stress of a failed relationship, right? Whether it's marriage, whatever, you talked about, well, you can share your experience with that, but there's a lot of people that are business owners of a failed marriage. And then what's that stress look like? And you kind of shared briefly your thoughts on that.
It's too simple to start a business without some sort of personal destruction inside of your life, right? Like you need to amp it up a little bit, right? So we started ours, and then about a year after, we went through a divorce, and it turns it up another level. That's for sure. You're trying to do all the things you need to do from a regular standpoint. Medicine in general it has a relatively heavy weight as well, right? Like you're dealing with life and death situations, not on every single case, but you're in a situation where decisions you do make impact an animal in someone else's life, and you have a business that's 1 year old, and to put it mildly, is more of a like it's a very stressful job. And then you were trying to go through a divorce at the same time. So yeah, I'm glad that's done. And what doesn't kill you does make you stronger, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it. Once we got that leveled out and that divorce became flatter and not so erratic, the business started becoming flatter and not so erratic too, right? Like I can remember, I don't know if you guys have had this happen, but the TELUS telephone, you're in America, so you don't have TELUS anymore, but
Right.
my telephone wouldn't work. And I was like, what's going on? Like, it was working fine last night, right? Well, then I would call TELUS and they'd be like, well, you haven't paid the TELUS bill.
Oh.
I'm like, well, I have money in the account. And they're like, but you didn't give it to us, right? So, you're trying to, figure those things out. And, I hired first 2 employees within 6 months of being divorced because my ex-wife would run all those things, right? And she, to the credit of looking back like 15 years later, when a divorce happens, you got to take at least 50% of that responsibility. And at the time, I didn't want to take any. And I thought she was doing a shitty job, and she was doing a really good job of looking after that, right? And once she left, that fell on my shoulders. And, I dropped the ball a lot on that.
Actually, so sorry, what I'm hearing there, and it's maybe good advice for people, is as chaos starts to happen around you, um, what can you, for lack of a better word, systemize, right? Or can you make efficient, systemize, delegate, get people to help you with to take some of those stresses away?
It's going to sound unique, and you're going to laugh at this, but I had a really good banker, and the banker was a client and a personal friend. And she just said one thing to me one day. She said, how about you just start putting some money away for you, because you got all this money going to a divorce lawyer and all these other things. And she said, let's start waking up at the same time every day, brushing our teeth, like literally just some little tiny standard operating procedures for how I operated my life. And then it just started coming into the business, right? Like, everything was done through text for me at the beginning. There was no emails. I'm still a pretty solid texting person. I do a lot better with emails, but at the beginning, people either called or they texted me. And so then I just lined it up to where I had a procedure in the morning. I went through the text, knew what was going on. I kept it all in the iCal and tried to sort of kick that out so that I was following up with people. And we'd text back after they came without knowing it really well. We were starting to look at the sales process and how that worked and how to follow along with people and provide the service they were looking for so they keep coming back. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, that sounds terrible, but it was that way at the beginning.
Chad, how many locations have you got now?
We have 2. If everything goes our way tomorrow, we're going to hire our 10th veterinarian.
Are you a veterinarian?
Most days, yeah, most days. Some days I'm on a skid steer. Nance and I do a little bit of the do-it-yourself stuff. There's things that we really enjoy, and it makes our marriage stronger. It sounds kind of weird, but doing some of those things on the back end, like landscaping and things that we could hire out, we still do those if they bring us joy. But as far as, like Greg was saying before, earlier today, I read a really good book about 3 years ago called Who Not How. I wish I'd have read that at the beginning. I really do. And I know you'd said that before. Both you and Dennis had talked about that, is like, how do you manage things to have somebody else that's better at what than you are at what you're doing? And that's been a struggle, right? Like, educated intelligentsia tend to think that because they're so smart at one thing, they can do everything. It's a big lie, but we tell ourselves, I'm a doctor. How hard could it be to put, to pay the TELUS bill, right? Well, come to find out, if you don't pay it, it's pretty hard, right? Like, it doesn't matter how smart you are.
Well, in retail, I always thought that we used to take our best people, our best salespeople on the floor and make them the manager. Well, you know what? It's 2 different skill sets. One is selling, and one is, being able to size up a customer and be able to, sell them what they need. And the other side is to manage people and manage a store. And some of them are just the worst managers in the world, but the best salespeople. So, and that's where sort of coaching and good management comes into play, is to be able to see who's doing what and who's best at whatever, and make it all work. Anyway, I can relate to that.
I think on a personal level, once you start to figure that out, it does work inside of your your personal stuff too, like which friends to talk to about what things, like instead of just
Yeah.
spewing your guts out to somebody because you want to vent, I've learned to be like, hey, this isn't the right person to talk to because they're just going to take me and we're just going to get the ditch and take a bath in the shit, right? Like, and I don't need that. And it took, you know, unfortunately, I'm a slow learner, and I didn't learn that till I was about 50, right? But now it's like you know who you want to have that discussion with, like who's going to help you say the things you may not want to hear or you may not want to think about doing personally or professionally, like, and yeah.
Chad, so you were going through a divorce, so now you speak we. You speak in we. Have you remarried with, and is she now part of your company, or who's we?
Yes, I got remarried, Saskatchewan farm girl, like all the
Great.
things that I written down as I was going through my divorce, because I wanted to be remarried. We have another child together. We blended our family. We have 5 kids. Nancy
Is she
runs all the
involved in the
financial
company?
stuff.
Is she involved in the company, your new wife?
She's our controller. Yeah, financial control. She really enjoys Greg's systems and how that all comes together. And that's really helped us a bunch with the systems that Greg and Dennis have put together on the financial side. Yeah, that's been great.
Yeah, I felt when I was in the sporting goods business, I was there almost 30 years. But I felt as I went through, one of the best things I did was bring Greg on later on. Later on, Greg was working as a buyer for Forzani Group, which is now Canadian Tire. But I used to have trouble. Who could I talk to? You're right about who you can share your information with. And man, it was really tough. Like I try to talk to my accountant, but then they got a one-sided deal. They don't really understand how to buy product and how to market product. They understand dollars and cents. And I would, talk to my lawyer, but then they didn't understand it either. I couldn't really talk to my staff because you go try to talk to your staff, you can't be negative. Like if things are tough, you can't be talking to them about the negative things in the company. You don't want them worried. Because one thing I know about staff, everybody talks. They love to talk, talk, talk. So you got to be very careful and what you tell anybody in the company. That's what I remember talking to a couple of senior people, managers of stores, and I talked to them about a couple of things. And the next thing I knew, everybody knew what was going on. And so I really was really careful about who I talked to and what I talked to them about. But it was really difficult. I had my brother John was the CEO of Forzani Group, and I could at least talk to him. I didn't, he was a good person. He sort of brought me along and showed me the business. But boy, it's really difficult when you're at the top end of the scale, running your own company and trying to find somebody to share it with. It's really difficult. You can't bring it home to your wife all the time either. God, that's old news. And then you start to, make it negative around the household. Um, but anyway, you know, I guess you just find a way. I was mentioning yesterday that, we're in the situation because we've allowed it to happen. We made the call to accept, running our own business. You know what I mean? Like we've done that, and by doing that, we have to suffer whatever it is we need to go through to be successful.
Well, Adam, I know the topic of men's health it's something that weighs heavily on you. Why did you get into that as an area that you're pursuing or discuss with people?
I watched my dad lose his second wife to cancer, and I saw what it did to him. And he tried to find faith. He tried to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, that sort of stuff. But eventually, he just got led back to alcoholism and depression and not dealing with the grief properly. I don't think he did the counseling in the same way that I do, and I don't think he really grew up talking about his feelings. And that's definitely a common thing that comes up in today's world about the older generation not talking about mental health, and now it's more widely accepted. So I think with him seeing how he ended up basically drinking himself to death, it made me realize how that sort of stuff can run in the family. It could run in obviously entrepreneurs, especially with a lot of that stress involved. And so it's just trying to be proactive and take care of my own mental health. But I didn't really deal with his death the way that I should have. I kind of just dealt with it by just moving forward, like men are told, like suck it up and just get on with your life type attitude. And it worked for me for several years, and I just kind of moved past it and thought it was I thought I grieved him well, but it was later when my daughter had a near tragic accident that a lot of other feelings of worry and anxiety and stress and depression and all that sort of stuff started creeping back in. And then at the 5-year anniversary of his death, it came back again. And so I went through basically 2 years of rock bottom hell. It was absolutely terrible. I got to the point where I basically gave up on my business. I was convinced that the business was the cause of my stress, and I couldn't move forward, and I just needed to let it go. And once I made that decision, it felt like the weight of the world was off my shoulders. Even though I had no idea what I was going to do next, no idea what I was going to do for income. I had, I think, 2 kids and a wife at that point. Actually, no, I had 3 kids at that point. And I had no idea what I was going to do next. And so I had already booked a holiday. So I just said, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to go on that holiday. And when I get back, I'll shut the business down. And that gave me the mental load lift that I needed to just be like, you know what? I don't need this business. I can still figure out my life and my family without it. And as soon as I did that, like, it was a game changer. When I came back, I didn't need the business, but I actually started enjoying it again and wanting to do it. And then it kind of became a mission of how can I help other people get past those challenges too, so they don't end up going down the road that my dad went down, and my business partner almost went down as well. He suffered from drugs and alcohol abuse as well, and now he's, I think, 6.5 years sober. So we just want to show other people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how dark it seems.
Geez, so like your dad has a history of not dealing well with a lot of burden, a lot of stress and struggle, and yet you put yourself into the pressure cooker of life by going and starting a business instead of just going and working for someone. So how do you like, so you mentioned that you walked away from the business for a bit to give yourself that pressure relief valve, or basically it sounds to me like you gave yourself permission to quit if you wanted to without being burdened by the thing that you might have been caught up in. But then
I was pretty much done. Like, I mean, I've quit my business probably 100 times over the years. But luckily for me, we're booked like usually 4 to 6 weeks out, right? So it's not as simple as just shutting the door and closing down. It's quite a process to wind things down. So it was at that moment where I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna wind it down. And like, I thought I was in a much worse place financially than I was. A lot of it was the mental health aspect creeping in, all that pressure. You're just not thinking clearly. And so yeah, I got to the point where I literally said, this is my last holiday with my family ever. I'll never be able to afford another one again. And went on my holiday. We went on Alaskan cruise, and I just gave up, and I just said, whatever will be, will be. And after I did that and came back, I was like, you know what, this isn't so bad. Like, luckily we don't have to deal with life and death like Chad does, but it kind of felt like that at times before I gave myself the permission to be like, no, you know what, family and friends are the most important thing. And my wife stood by me the whole time, and my kids love me no matter what. So at the end of the day, I was like, well, this is all I have, and that is what it is.
So Adam, who was running the company when you were taking these breaks?
So that one, I've always had a pretty good team in place. Like, I've got great divisional managers that run a lot of the day to day. But it was always the stress of receivables are high right now, or do we take on this project and they're not going to give a deposit? So like, I did a lot of calls with Greg that year too, just to talk things through. And I knew the right logical answers, but emotionally and mentally, I just wasn't processing things the right way. Luckily I did have a team that allowed me to go on holidays and actually turn off my phone, because most entrepreneurs don't. They stay connected, and you always have that stress involved, right?
Yeah, you're pretty planned out that way, that's for sure.
Well, and I just got back from a month in Europe with my family, and my team killed it. They rocked everything. It was only like the last week that they said that there was some issues that started coming up, but for the most part, they were unbelievable.
Yeah, I've always gone by the belief of, when I was sort of in charge of everything as an entrepreneur, is what we have control over and what we don't have control over. Like in retail, I had control over a lot of things. Where I had control over our expansion, where we were going to put stores, the staff that we would hire, the product that we carry, the marketing, all those things we had control over. A lot of things I didn't have control over. And I, it took me a while to understand that, what I could really change and what I could, you know, do that would make things better, and what just out of my control. Things out of my control were the weather, like in retail, at least sporting goods. You got summer and you got winter. And, in the wintertime, if it's warm out and you're sitting there with a whole store full of jackets that would keep you warm at 80 below zero, and it's plus 25 outside, well, it's frustrating. Man, oh man, you got to really be, those are things I never had control over. Don't have control over the economy. Don't have control over the type of customer that comes in the store. You try to do it. But by understanding that, so as I understood what I had more control over, then if things needed to be changed, those are the things that I really concentrated on, those things that were in my power. It really made a lot more sense. We had to, I think, like in retail, we had to have really good managers. So like Adam, you've got good people in place, but boy, that's what I had to really work on is good managers, good buyers. You had to have good buyers. Like we had multiple stores. So I started off, if you had one store, one location, okay, you can do it. But if you got multiple, whatever, you got to count on other people to do the job. Well, again, that's something control factor. And we just worked and worked and worked to get the right people in the right spot. And anyway, those are the two things I just wanted to share with you that took me a while to understand that. But once I did, I had more energy geared specifically in those areas. In other areas, I just had to accept.
So with a lot of the things, so what have you done specifically within your business that's helped you kind of reduce your stress or put you into a situation where you realized everything wasn't as bad as you thought? If anyone wants to just step up for that question, I don't have anyone specific in mind.
One thing that I've really focused on is if I'm not as good at something, then it's going to stress me out more. If it's something that takes up a lot of time that's more like a busy work task that's not really like the big picture stuff, that type of stuff, I'm quick to delegate. I was quick to hire like another admin assistant originally. Unfortunately, that one didn't work out, and then I did go through the Forzani business coaching hiring process to hire my first office manager, who's now my operations manager, and she's been unbelievable. Just to be able to pass off a lot of that administration stuff that I don't really enjoy doing as much, then I can focus more on the business building and the sales, relationships, that sort of stuff. And now, like, I'm at the point where my team runs the day to day, and I just do what I enjoy doing, which is really what the whole idea of running a business is supposed to be about, is building the life you want to live. And like you guys say, more profit, less stress, right? So so I like to empower my staff to handle a lot of the stuff without me. But the reality is you can't be everywhere every time anyway. So one big delegation rule I learned was if somebody can do it 70% as good as you, you just have to let go of that other 30%. And it was very tough for me to do, but yeah, I've been able to definitely reduce my stress and empower other people to do good things.
That's great.
What about you, Chad?
Yeah, I really like where Adam's at with that. Like in our situation, we just hired a surgeon this past year. So it's the first time in almost 30 years I don't do surgery now, right? Like, and just because that's his wheelhouse. And so I just dropped I wasn't doing a lot, but I just dropped it. Same as Adam did. We hired a very capable young woman that started as our marketing director. And now she's our practice manager, runs almost all the hiring and consulting on that side of things, runs the administration side. And she does, I don't know, 5 times better than I did, when I was running it. We were very lucky that person came along, Technologist wise, when we go back to the beginning, I would run 1 technologist. Now I run 3 technologists and 1 intern. So a young veterinarian at the same time. In the same time frame that I was doing, probably actually less. I used to work about 12 hours a day. Now I work somewhere between 7 to 9 a day for the most part. But again, that's just simply based on, as Adam said, just letting go of some of those things. And sometimes when people come on board, I like your 70% rule. I wish I'd have used that more at the beginning, because if they weren't 80 to 90%, I kept putting my fingers back in there, right? it just allowed me to be a lot more present by doing that with what I do from day to day.
Chad, you got 2 locations? 2?
Yep. Yeah, one in DeWinton, right next to Spruce Meadows.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then the other one's in Airdrie on the north side between Airdrie and Crossfield.
I used to teach in Airdrie. I taught high school there. George
Probably changed a
McDougall
little
High
bit from
School.
when you taught. It's like, it's
What's
close
that?
to
Oh,
100,000 people now.
when I was there, it was like, I don't know, 1,500 people, 2,000 people in the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah.
Now, how
It's
many people there? 30,000?
just about, it's about 100. I think it's around 85,000.
100,000 people.
Yeah, 85,000. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Anyway,
It's a nice town.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, what I find interesting about this conversation is most people struggle running one business and not breaking apart. And here we have Adam with 4 and you with 2
Yeah,
locations,
that's really
right?
good.
Like, and I think Adam, when you said at one point, you made a comment earlier that once you started looking at the numbers, things weren't as bad as you thought they were. It was all just wrapped up into your emotions.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess whenever I saw a little bit of a downturn, I would think, oh no, the sky is falling, the economy's crashing, and I'm going down, right? And it just shows you the power of the mind and how strong that is. If you're thinking negative thoughts and you start telling yourself negative thoughts, it just keeps snowballing. But on the flip side,
Yeah.
you can also tell yourself positive thoughts and it snowballs too.
Well, Adam, what are the top 2 things that really sort of stress you out now that you've got things fairly under control? What are the things that do stress you out, at least mentally, um, in today's world? What
3
you
kids.
would not even work?
No, trying to raise 3 kids and be a great father and support my wife with that end. Because at the end of the day, that's like you said, it's the most important thing you can do is or like Dennis said, is raise children and make them into productive members of society and set a good example. We struggle with behavioral issues and all sorts of like anxiety and ADHD and that sort of stuff. And so that definitely keeps me on my toes, and it reminds me like why I do what I do and why I love what I do is because I found kind of my niche and what I'm good at. And it's just trying to help the kids like try as many things as they can to find what their niche is, what they're good at, right? Because like in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And then I lucked into a business program scholarship and I fell in love with business, and that's what I wanted to do from there. So everybody's got their different preferences, and it's just trying to support them on the mental health side as well, and just help them grow into great humans.
What you, Chad? What things do you? What are the big stresses in your life today, business-wise, that you find hard to sort of stay on top of, or whatever?
Business wise, it's a lot of moving parts, and then having the trust that the people that we put in place will do their
Come
stuff.
through.
Yeah, and Greg can probably comment on this, and so could Dennis. But and I don't know about Adam's business, but when we were between, let's say 0 and 7, I had a pretty good finger of like who was what. Christmas was easy, all that sort of stuff. And then as we started climbing, and now we're at about 35, I don't see those people every day. I mean, I really try to connect with my veterinarians as much as I can every single day, and there's 9 of them. That doesn't happen. I feel like if you lose that communication, and I don't mean control, I think just mostly knowing that you're available for them and that you can help them, that's a bit of a conundrum. And then we just have one more big project I really want to do, and Greg's helping us with that. And it's above our head, right? Like it's something we've never done, spending money that we've never spent to change an industry in a way that's never been changed here. Like it's like, I don't know, as Steve Jobs says, we want to ding the universe one more time. And that's probably, but I don't know, if you don't have something to struggle against, healthy, right? Like I feel like that's one of the things that's become a lot easier. Maybe Adam can comment on that too, is that I think I've always liked the struggle, right? And the achievement and the process of doing it. I mean, I think that's not just a male thing, but I definitely know that males inside of society, it's a big part of it from the time when you're little, is like conquering shit, like, and that can be physical,
right?
It can be mental. It can all become unhealthy, right? And that's the only thing I had to um, watch for. Is it was like it was just unhealthy. Now I look for
How
that
would you
healthy
advise
stress.
people? How would you advise people deal with that?
And I think if you get your strategy, put your systems in place, and then just work it and work it and work it, and make sure someone's behind you, or helping you, or directing you, or holding you accountable, and then listening to where you're at. Like if it's not healthy, you start spinning, like I don't know if Dennis said this or Adam said it earlier. You start getting onto negative thoughts that you should not be doing. Like it's just like, why are you thinking about that? I don't know. Well, then
Yeah.
stop. It's like the old deal with what was that TV show? And he's helping her, and he was a psychologist, and he just looks at her, and she's
Bob
like, I got
Newhart,
this problem, and I
stop
got
it.
that problem. He's like, just stop. Bob Newhart. Yeah. It's like, just stop
Oh
it.
yeah,
Right. Like,
stop it.
yeah, stop it. And then when you're on the positive things, let's keep eating that ice cream. Like just serve it up all the time. Like let's eat that a lot. And that's really helped, having a really good set of goals, a good strategy, and then watching the self-talk, right? Like I think those are the three things that have changed in the last 15 years from the divorce. Because obviously when you're going through a divorce, you struggle with staying on I had a really good day. Well, yeah, but this happened and that happened. No, you still had a really good day, right? Like, and I think just that simple little tweak of, you know, you could see snow is terrible, but it's also moisture, right? Like in our part of the world, right? Like it's not in Arizona, but in Calgary, snow is moisture, right? So you just gotta, you get the choice.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice right there. And I know probably for people listening, it might sound too simple, but if I were to sort of regurgitate what you just said, it's focus on the, glass half full versus the glass half empty, right? I know it's a cliche saying, but focus on the look, like trigger yourself to look for the positive, look for the progression, look for the step forward, not the step backwards, whatever words you want to use. But, and that might sound too simple, but based on what you just said, that's actually what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's that simple, right? I believe the whole thing of we need to struggle, right? Greg knows this, I'm pretty anti-woke. It's not about the softness of life, right? I'm not looking for a soft landing. I'm looking for a way to figure out how to land on my feet and move forward, right? I don't need you to put a
Yeah.
pillow out there. I might come in hard and rub my nose on the ground, but I'm going to get back up. I think as entrepreneurs in the early years, that sometimes comes about as drama. And then as you get older, it's like, I just waste my time. Like that's just screwing up my landing, right? And now it's like, you just try to stay away from that, but it still needs to be hard. We still need to know that we earned it, right? Like one of my customers said this the other
Yeah.
day about the competition coming up at Calgary Stampede. He's like, some people are like, oh, the Americans shouldn't show up because they're going to make it too tough. And his comment to me was as well, if I win the championship and not the best weren't there, then I'm not really the champion, am I? I'm like, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that feeling. Right?
Yeah. Wow, that's sorry, just making light bulbs go off in my head of what you're saying, but yeah, just focus on positive, not negative. Uh, Anxiety can come from a lack of a plan. So take a step back and make some form of plan. And the plan could just be simple. Do this, then this, then this, right? Look at numbers. Look at numbers. If you're not sure what the numbers are, like Adam talked about it earlier, if you're not sure what numbers are, look at them. And if they're not where you want them to be, come up with a plan. And then focus on the plan, not why you're not hitting it. And that can alleviate a lot of anxiety and stress, is what I'm hearing you're saying. Love it. Good message.
I think part of it's also, I mean, most guys, I don't know, like I've often said, the most useless male in the world is the guy who has got money and time, but nothing to conquest, no mission to go after, nothing to do. They just become really difficult to deal with. And I think for a lot of men, specifically, stress comes from, well, I have a fight to fight, but I don't know how to win it, or it doesn't feel like I can win it. It becomes
Right.
kind of like there's a battle, but it's hopeless. So why am I fighting a hopeless battle can lead to a lot of stress and depression. And I know the business world can feel a lot like I'm fighting up against everything and I don't even know if I'm going to win. So what are some of the things you guys have done in the business to show you that, you know what, this thing can actually be winnable and I can actually get to where I want to be that makes the fight worth it?
So I just want to speak actually on that positivity thing. I went a step further and I actually mandate positivity as a requirement of employment contracts. It's actually listed in my employment contract um, to show how serious it is here, and we hold each other accountable for it. So if somebody's being negative, we say, okay, you got a problem. Let's focus on the solution, not the problem. And so yeah, I did that yesterday. I was at a charity golf tournament and I got a text, we got a problem. I said, okay, what's the solution? Before I even knew what the problem was, and said somebody gave her 2 weeks notice. I'm like, okay, I've already started the process for another position that we could probably draw some applicants from there. No problem. Yeah, we'll solve that this week. And just having that positive mindset is huge for sure.
That's awesome. Great advice.
So outside of positive mindset, what do you guys use to focus on to make sure that you're actually going in a direction that you know you could win versus necessarily just fighting to spin your tires?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely need to know that you have a chance to win. When it was feeling hopeless, then yeah, that's when the negativity and depression start sinking in. But at the end of the day, you look at all the other companies that have been successful, and if they can do it, why can't we, right? It's not that we can't, it's just that we're not there yet, and that's the attitude I take. And the thing I love about business is that the revenue and the profit is just a scorecard to see how you're doing. And that's what I love about it is that it is a game. It's a challenge. Obviously, I have a deeper mission beyond that, but that's the easiest thing to measure is your numbers. And I can set a goal. Okay, this is what we're going to be at next year. This is what we're going to be at the year after, and have that clear target. And when I start achieving those milestones, yeah, it definitely pumps me up and gets me excited. When I can get other people excited about living that dream too, that's what gets me going is providing a great place for people to basically not only make a living but build their dream potentially too.
Love it.
That's really cool.
You know, and probably to add to that and help answer Dennis's question is, I don't know, what I've always done in life, of whether it's business or going hiking or going on a trip or, I don't know, driving the boat at night, whatever it happened in the dark, whatever it happens to be, try to remove as much of the unknown as you can. So, you know, build a budget, right? Build a plan, build a goal. And in that process, you'll know if you should even do that thing or not. And in some cases, it'll stop you from doing that thing. Like if it's business, it'll stop you from opening that other location or hiring that person, or like if you actually do a plan with numbers to realize, hey, wait a minute, those numbers don't work, it doesn't make sense, then it stops you from going down a road that might actually add a whole crap load of stress, but also jeopardize your business. So even just planning in the future, like Adam just said, 2-3 years out, and doing it with numbers so you know if it's even feasible or not, can lower a lot of stress.
Well, I think, Greg, numbers is key. I think staff is key. And I think, just whatever you're trying to sell in that area they're all key. Like you got to have the dollars and the people. I mean, you got to have that. And, I know when we were looking at expanding, Greg, we had to make sure that, we could do it in a new city. And, when you make new decisions, it's a lot of time that people will take to understand your store in a new environment. And can you make it for 2 or 3 years at a lower amount of income coming in than what you would have in your successful stores? And, you have to make sure that you have the dollars to figure that out, that it works. You need safeguards is what you do.
Wow, so that's a really good piece of advice for anybody listening to this. If you're thinking about starting a business, to your point, Dad, if you have to plan, you're going to lose money for a little while.
Oh,
and
yeah.
generally
Personal.
speaking, yeah, like a lot of businesses never get to a point where they make money. But if you do get to a point where you make money, kind of the general law of averages is you're going to lose money for about 24 months. So if you don't plan for that and you don't know that, so if you build a true budget by month and you know you're going to lose money for 24 months, and then you put that money aside so you have that money to pull from, then it takes the anxiety and stress away while you're going through that. Because imagine you start a new business, you lose money for 2 straight years. That's like a huge stress. But if you planned it that way and you put that money aside to start, it takes a lot of that stress away, and then you can start making good decisions. So yeah, that's a huge stress reliever. Absolutely. And that's the way we used to do it. And I think too many businesses probably run out there and start a business without that. And then, month 4, they're losing money, and then just boom, huge stress on the shoulders, and they don't have a way out, and they think the world's ending. And yeah, it can be awful. No question.
So a lot of times on those situations, like we would look at, one veterinarian's more profitable than another one. And so we're trying to, because we don't get the luxury of good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's just where we're at. The profession has been shrinking over the last 30 years since I joined. So there's less horse veterinarians now than there was when I started. So not that you need to make silk purse out of a sow's ear sort of thing, but sometimes you do. And so we're always trying to figure out how to add in those strengths that the good producers have, and this is a struggle. I know Dennis talked about it, and Joe did too before. Like, it's one thing to be a great salesman. It's another thing to be a great sales manager, right? And trying to figure that out. So I think those are one of the biggest challenges that we deal with now is how do we turn, if we use, say, grossing dollars, if we turn how do you turn a $500,000 veterinarian into $1 million veterinarian, right? Because as Greg knows, the $1 million veterinarian's got a 18 to 20% profit. The $500,000 veterinarian is a break-even deal, right? And so
Yeah.
there's that transition, and then trying to figure out how long do you put into that person to develop that practice and the people that go around them. Coming back to the systems, though, if you start meeting with them and you start jamming, without saying jamming like forcing, but continually reiterating things and then having them copy some of those things, I think that's the beauty of systemization and understanding the numbers and then sitting down and talking to them so they're accountable, right? And they're
Right.
more engaged. Usually their performance goes up, right? But
Right.
just my 2 cents.
Does anybody want to add anything to the conversation we may have missed?
I want to say thanks to Dennis and Greg for giving us the opportunity to sit down and talk about things that are potentially can help other young people, male or female, but obviously it's Male Health Month. So it's good for us to give examples and to be able to participate. So thanks for asking us to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.